When you're starting out, it's hard to tell high-quality wine from a bottle of Plunk. It can also get really expensive. Boy, have I found that out lately by looking at my bank statements. I did a lot of research to find a better way to buy quality wine without breaking the bank, and that's how I discovered an awesome website called Last Bottle Wines. Last Bottle Wines has fostered personal relationships with wineries across the world and offer one bottle of high-quality wine a day at 30 to 70% off. When the bottle is gone, it's gone. New day, new bottle, new savings. I recently ordered a Spanish Tempranillo. This wine normally retails for $74, and I got it from Last Bottle Wines for only $32. It's not a wine club, so there's no fees. Shipping is affordable and can even be free. You know Mason and I are always after the best wines at the best price. We want you to enjoy the same deal. That's why we got you this special offer. Some of our listeners have already taken advantage of the deal and are loving the experience. All you need to do is go to lastbottlewines.com/invite/tasting-anarchy to get $10 off your first purchase while helping your favorite Wine and Liberty podcast. That's lastbottlewines.com/invite/tasting-anarchy to get $10 off a delicious bottle of wine at 30 to 70% off. Tasting Anarchy, your Wine and Liberty podcast. Join Mason and Jake each week as they try new wines and discover how much government is in your drink. Mason, what are you sipping on tonight?
I am sipping on, actually, the Pedernales Cellars Tempranillo 2016 that you got me. Not the reserve that you sent to Mark Claire.
Okay.
So I'm finishing that bottle now because apparently in the last 2.5 hours, my sense of taste has come back much better. Actually made a really good dinner and didn't taste that much, but I definitely tasted the wine.
Good. Okay. Now that you taste a little bit better, what are you thinking about it?
I'm thinking I screwed up and accidentally ripped the cork in half and got a lot of cork dust in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta well, here's a trick for the listeners, everybody. This is, Jake and Mason, by the way. We just, kind of trying to do a little bit of a different intro since we're doing a little.
I mean, we're 60 episodes in.
Yeah, that's true. It's not really rebranding, but I redid the website this week, and I'm trying to get our intros and all the stuff that's pre-recorded sorted out so the show sounds better for everyone. And we're getting these top-notch guests like Mark Claire now, so I gotta get that sorted out. And I've got a couple of pretty good interviews lined up with winemakers. One in particular that I'm really excited about, I'm going to be doing on the 10th or the 11th of April. It's with a guy in Oregon who he's actually got an amazing story. He's been in the wine industry since the 80s, and now he does biodynamic wine. And this is going to be really cool. You and I have touched on biodynamic wine before with Jackson. Yeah, quite a few times. And we talked about it with Jackson. And finally we're going to have a genuine expert on it. In the show, but I'm glad though that your taste came back so that you could try that, because I really like that Tempranillo. I think it's one of the better ones here.
Yeah,
actually, there's a lot of good ones here, but
I was gonna say, Jacob, you have a consistent thing with movies where there's no bad movie.
That's true.
there really isn't a bad wine for you. I mean, yeah, there are some you don't go in for the super gory movies. There are movies you just straight avoid, and there's certain wine types that you just straight avoid because they're super sugary.
I did have one not too long ago. I even did a review of it, but that I just didn't finish the bottle. I did think it was interesting. This is sort of the same thing with me in movies, though, as with me in wine, is I can find something positive to say about every wine. It's just that some, like you said, there's just some that are just not really for me. I don't really want to get them again. And actually that kind of leads me into my wine this week.
Wait, hang on.
Yeah.
We were going to give our listeners a cork dust
right. That's right.
Suggestion.
Yeah. So what you do if you get a little cork dust in there, or you and I have done this a couple of times where we've mangled the cork so bad we had to kind of use a knife to drill it out. And I learned this actually recently. I think I learned it from Jackson, actually, is when that happens, you can take a coffee filter, if you have one, and pour it through the coffee filter when it's going into your glass. And that'll keep the cork dust in the bottle, or it'll catch it in the coffee filter so that you don't have to deal with that.
That's a very reasonable idea. And the coffee filter is not going to strain it too much. So it might take some particulates out if you have a high sulfate wine or something like that. But
yeah,
that really wouldn't change the flavor too much because coffee filters don't add anything, even though they have a certain smell.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like, and actually some wines, they do have particulate matter in them. And I actually have a filter that I think we reviewed once on here that is pretty cool filter. It does take out a lot of sulfates or sulfites. Is it sulfates or sulfites?
I want to say it's sulfates, but
okay.
It might not be.
Okay, well, whichever it is, it does. It says it takes those out, but the filtering gives it a really nice sort of finish polish. It also oxidizes it a little bit, and it's over there. I can't remember what it's called, but it's pretty cool. So that's how I do it. And I did have one recently where somehow I mangled the cork because I was using, my opener that's like a pump. And I'm actually not as keen on that as I was when I first got it because it doesn't seem to work very well now. I think it like wears out really quickly maybe. And
mine hasn't. Well, I mean, half of the bulk thing of wine my parents got me, half of them are corked, half of them are screw bottle caps. So I don't use it as frequently. I also don't drink as much wine as you do, just in general.
That's true.
Like mine works pretty well. The problem is like because I don't have a stopper like you do.
Oh yeah.
Like if I recork it, then I have to use pliers basically to pull it out because it doesn't create enough of a seal when you recork it to use the pump again.
Okay. That makes sense. So yeah. I use those vacuum sealers, which are pretty cheap. I should send you some of those for your birthday.
Nah, I mean, I kept looking at them on Amazon, seeing them cheap as dirt, and I just kept going like, add it to the cart, add it to the cart, add it to the cart, and didn't. I'll do it eventually, but like part of the problem is, like I said, a lot of the wines that I have are screw bottle cap ones, which, I mean, you probably should, vacuum pump those as well. But
yeah,
I mean, also,
if you drink them within 3 to 5 days, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I rarely have a bottle open that isn't like cooking wine or something like that that stays open for more than 7 days. And 7 days is a lot, but you do see some interestingness to like not the cheapest wines because those taste pretty skunky.
Yeah, but
like the mid-tier wines, sometimes they age really interesting with the extra oxidation or whatever it is over those days.
Well, I think there's, we went over this actually, and I mentioned this in the show before. I take those wine classes with Elizabeth from Wine for Normal People. And she's talked about that before with some of the, in the Bordeaux class in particular, with some of the French wines, with the kind of the lower quality Bordeauxs, that if you open them up, and then just kind of put the cork back in and leave them on the top of your refrigerator or whatever for a day or two. A lot of times they'll open up, they'll taste a lot better that second day than they do that night. And it's just get a little bit of extra oxygen in there. Not too much because you put the cork back in, but a little bit in there, let it mellow out, let it open up, and you'll get, a little bit higher quality wine. Now you're only going to be able to keep it up there on the fridge for, like I said, 3 to 5 days or, wherever you're putting it. 3 to 5 days, and then it's not going to be great after that. But a lot of the flavor develops, a lot of the aroma develops. But one thing that you mentioned actually a couple things that you mentioned was one was Wine Club, and I'm drinking a Wine Club wine tonight.
You are, yes.
And this was actually because I do the Wall Street Journal wine. I might cancel my Wall Street Journal wine because actually we're going to go over it right now. I do think that the Wall Street Journal wine or wine clubs in general are good, and we've gone over wine clubs before, but I kind of wanted to just sort of touch on them again. And since I'm drinking a Wine Club wine tonight, I figured we would just kind of recap it as, before we go into our article for this week. Or it's not really an article, but our subject for this week. But so what I'm drinking tonight is called Full Rack Special Blend California 2017. It's 14.1% ABV, which I thought was interesting that they added that 0.1. I've seen it before, but it's just whenever they don't do it like at 14 or at 14.5, that's always interesting to me.
Yeah, when it's not, the full or a half mark.
Yeah.
That's very odd.
Yeah. So this wine, it comes from my Wall Street Journal Wine Club, and this is actually only the second shipment I've gotten from Wall Street Journal wines because I had it switched to quarterly, and then I skipped one quarter. So it's been a long time, and I just forgot to cancel this one actually, or forgot to postpone it because I have way more wine than I could possibly drink. But this one, I'll give a review of the taste, but one of the things that I do on the Wall Street Journal wines is I try to go look up the wines and see what they cost to know if I got a good deal or not. It is very difficult on some of them to figure out any information about them.
Yeah.
So this wine is bottled by a company called Incognito Wines. They're in Gainesville, California.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where Gainesville is?
No, I don't.
Okay. So Gainesville, I didn't know it either until I looked it up. It's about an hour or so north of Napa, and it's where the Francis Ford Coppola winery is, which is a semi-famous winery from the director. I guess he owns it.
Yeah.
So
George Lucas talked him into buying that winery, I think.
Oh, really? That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was like some sort of tax dodge or something like that.
Oh, neat. Oh, I like that guy. So the Incognito Wine Company doesn't actually have a forward-facing website, and this does tend to be pretty common for wine club wines. What ends up happening is a large bulk supplier of wine, the company that owns Franzia, for example, which I think is called like American Wine Company or something like that.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah. They'll produce a huge amount of wine, some really low quality, and they'll put that in their Franzia because that's what people expect. Some kind of mid-tier, bottom of the shelf wine with white labels, and then they'll produce, whatever their kind of nicer wine is. They're, $20+ bottles of wine. Then they got the bottom of the shelf grocery store wines, which are like $10. And a lot of those, they'll just leave white labels. They'll sell these wines to wine clubs. The wine clubs will make a label for it, something cool, like this one called Full Rack. It's actually not a bad label. It's very attractive to me. It's a red label. It's got a grill on it, like one of those like dome grills, kind of like the one you have.
Yeah, like a Weber.
Yeah, like a Weber, right? It's got a Weber grill on it. It's very inviting. And honestly, this is a good wine for if you were grilling out. And like I said, I'll get into flavors. But anyway, so they'll sell these. Somebody will create a label, and then they'll go ahead and mark up that, and they'll sell it to their wine club subscribers. And I think this is what Wall Street Journal Wine does. They're actually the supplier for Wall Street Journal Wine is a wholesale club that actually Wall Street Journal Wines is one of the faces of a couple of different companies that are a couple of different wine clubs that you can subscribe to, and the supplier is the same. And they'll change up the labels based on what they're trying to promote, basically. So,
yeah.
And I don't think it's shady or anything. It's just it's the way that they do it. And they do. And honestly, like, I think this was fine for what I paid. I got a good deal. So I'll kind of go into the flavors. This is a quintessential red wine blend. It's fruity. It's not very tannic. It's light-bodied. It tastes just like dark black fruit. It's exactly what a red table wine, what you would expect from a red table wine. It doesn't have the, a very strong tannic flavor can be very, not offensive exactly, but for somebody who doesn't like that, it's just in their face and they're not going to like it. This is a very, it's off-putting. It's very generic wine taste. It's just tastes like red wine. It's not bad. It's not like I don't want to disparage Franzia. Carr likes Franzia. A lot of people like Franzia. But it's not that level of wine.
Yeah, it's more red wine than that. Franzia is one of those things where it's like it's one of those weird things where it's like you have the notes of red wine in it, which is good, but you also have the notes of sweetness, which is very odd for reds of that varietal.
Yes,
or of those grape types, whereas you can have some sweet reds in like the dessert category or some of the more exotic like Georgians. Like I'm sure they have some sweet reds.
Yeah, they do.
I've had the idea with this. Like this is like generic red wine, just happens to be sweet because that's kind of the American.
But yeah, so anyways, kind of going back to the wine club thing. So these are, I made some notes in my, on our show notes page just so I could go over this and not forget it. Wine clubs. You're part of a wine club because your parents got it for you?
Not technically. It was a wine, it's like a wine distribution website.
Okay.
Kind of like Last Bottle, but different.
Okay.
And this was just their, 2018 best hits, kind of thing.
All right.
But I am part of a wine club from what my wife got me for the year for my birthday.
Oh, okay.
But that's the Gold Club, and I haven't done any of them. But since you're going to be doing something adventurous and fun next weekend, I may do a solo episode on the Carminari that I got from that because I've been sitting on that.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. And by the way, speaking of pronunciations in Carminari, I think that we've been saying it wrong. I think it's Carmeniere.
Yes, I think Jackson has said Carmeniere, which
because I said
is a very pretty name.
Yeah.
Like, I really like that name.
Yeah. Well, because we did at the last wine class that I did with Elizabeth Snyder from Wine for Normal People. We did South America. And Chile does Carmenere is what I've been calling it, but they do Carmenere, and she was pronouncing it Carmenere.
Yeah, but she also said in the one we did together that her pronunciation is terrible too. But it's like when Jackson says his pronunciation is terrible, it's like, yeah, you may be totally wrong, but you have such authority when you say it. I'm just going with it.
That's true. For wine clubs, these are the advantages that I see and the disadvantages that I see, and so you guys can take this as you will. One more note on this wine before I move on. The reason I chose to do this wine, aside from I thought it was a good time to revisit wine clubs, is because I have gotten a little bit of response on Twitter. So if you guys are listeners, I am on Twitter a lot. I will respond. If you guys want to private message me, you can, or direct message me. Or if you just want to post on our page, that's fine too. You can also reach me, tastinganarchy@gmail.com, and I will respond to that. One of the comments that I got on Twitter from a direct message was, and I don't know if this person wants to be, called out or whatever on the podcast, so I won't say their name, but they were saying they like it better when we do wines that are like sub $15. That is not really where I'm at in my wine right now, but I do still get them occasionally, and so I will make it a point to make sure that that we do sub $15 wines at least once or twice a month, just because if that's what the listeners want, we want to please the listeners. So,
and that's kind of my price point. Not my price point is sub 20 still, but I have so much wine that I didn't pay for,
right?
That I've got to get through.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I also try to stay. Well, I try to stay about sub 25, but lately I've been kind of getting up there. So
yeah, you have.
And actually, a lot of it's because Last Bottle Wines has such good deals. And I've been getting like $74 bottles of wine for like 30, and they're great deals. They're really good wines. I think you and I have talked a little bit about it. Some of them are interesting. Well, let me get into my advantages and disadvantages, and maybe we'll get into that later. So the advantages that I see with a wine club, and these are the things that I've really enjoyed about being part of the Wall Street Journal Wine Club, is it takes a lot of guessing out of looking for wine when you're a beginner or you're just kind of starting out and you don't really know what to find. If like me, when I first signed up for this, I knew I liked reds, and I had an idea of a lot of the reds I liked. So I knew I liked Cab Sauv. I knew I liked Cab Franc. I think maybe by that time we had discovered Carmenere, and maybe Tempranillo.
Maybe not on that one.
Okay. So I knew that I liked reds. I knew I liked dry reds, and on Wall Street Journal Wine, you have the option to only get those, and they'll just send you 12 bottles of red, and it'll be a variety pack of a whole bunch of different things, and it's a good way to develop your palate. There's still reds in there that I'm not crazy about. I'm still not a huge fan of Merlot or Malbec. They're okay, and I like them a lot better now than I used to. Now that I kind of understand it better, and also
I like Malbec a lot, but but it tastes like the blend. So like when I want just a regular red wine.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of, maybe that's why I don't like it as much. It's just not it's not as interesting to me. But it's good. Like if somebody was serving Malbec at a dinner, and if it was either very inexpensive or free, yeah, sure, I'd take that. That's good. There are some sweeter red wine or white wines that I just wouldn't take at all. So so from that standpoint, if you're just getting into wine and you don't really know, but you kind of have a general idea of what you know, but you can, and also actually you can get the mixed orders too, where you can get some whites and some reds, even if you have no idea what you like. And often it's a really good deal. Like I think the first one that I got from Wall Street Journal Wines was like $80 for 14 bottles of wine. And 2 of the bottles were actually very good bottles. They were $40 bottles of wine, and they actually sell them at the grocery store. So I knew they were $40 bottles of wine. They have, now granted, this is sort of the Lidl situation that you and I ran into before, where there's the Lidl version of that wine and then the normal wine store version of that wine. What the difference is, I'm not 100% sure. The labels are different. Everything that it says on the label is the same, but the colors on the label and the design is slightly different. So not really sure the difference, but they were very good wines. I had one of them. If you go back to the Nate episode when I first came to Texas, that in that episode he and I shared the bottle together, and it was a really good experience. We both really liked it. I still have one up in the shelf. I might break it out. Actually, maybe I break it out with you when you come out for Chillderburg.
I think we're going to have so much darn wine.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're going to drink $1,000 bottle of wine for that. So, it's going to be an event.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
yeah. Either way.
Yeah. The second advantage that I think is that it's just kind of fun to get something like that. And to not know what's in there. It's also a really good gift to give other people that drink but are not really inclined to buy wine for themselves. So if I would have no problem giving you $100 order of Wall Street Journal wines, right? Mm-hmm. So $100 order, you get 14 bottles, like in that first one, and that's it. So you get the $14 bottles, and that's less than $100 gift for you, and it's a really fun gift. So you kind of look like a champion. So those two are I think the main advantages of having a wine club subscription or just sending a one-off wine club like bulk thing. Mm-hmm. Can you think of any others, Mason?
So I think elaboration on the second point is one of the things that's very hard when, we started this show because we wanted to know more about wine. We didn't want to be hoity-toity wine snobs necessarily. Well, we're kind of hoity-toity as it is, but we didn't want to be, it's hard to tell, what you should be drinking. And one of the advantages of a wine club is, there are some where they're offloading just garbage wine, because that's just the way the model works. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the time, and this is kind of borne out, in your and I's opinion a lot, is if you don't necessarily know that it's trash wine, you may not think it's trash wine. So you kind of have this good experience, and you get the fun of somebody kind of doing the work for you. Because that's one of the things that was very hard a lot that you and I kind of struggled at the beginning of the series, is going into Total Wine and going okay, I know I like, for me, I know I like Riesling. I'm literally just going to buy every Riesling that's under $25.
Yeah.
Until we're basically, Jacob's if you bring another Riesling or Pinot Grigio here, I'm going to hit you with the bottle, which never happened.
No.
But that's kind of the idea is we didn't know that especially with Riesling, and it's a little harder, you're not going oh, this one is grown on the right bank of the Rhine and, blah, blah, blah. You link it with the Jackson, his left bank of Bordeaux, and it's very clear why he likes that, especially when you talk to him about it.
Well, I don't know about you as much, but now that I've had left bank, right bank, and a lot of the different regions in Bordeaux, it has become much more clear to me what the difference is. And it is starkly different. I've learned that I like Medoc, and I'm not crazy about much of the other Bordeaux, although I do recognize that they're high quality wines.
Yeah, and that's the thing that is really interesting about the idea of the wine club is there's something about the presentation of someone picked these. Somebody went through the work to produce this product. And, I think people take a level of pride in their work. You know what I mean? It's not like they're going this costs us 10 nickels and we're shilling this guy for $400 or something. The wine club that my wife got me, it comes with a placard about Chile. It came with 2 different types of pepper that are South American plants. They're not pepper plants, but they're like pepper. It came with local made chocolates. It came with 2 hot sauces. It came with this extra information. So with wine clubs, you can get these extra parts to the package. It's not just about the wine. Some of them are you learn about the culture. Some of them have very specific things that you're looking for. And it, especially as you and I have highlighted very frequently on the show, sometimes it's really difficult to procure good wine, let's say. Mm-hmm. You may only have the local Food Lion or Farm Fresh because there's not a Total Wine. There's not a Yanni's Wine Shop, a local one. But your state does allow interstate shipping, and you can get a wine club to ship you something.
Yeah.
So you can get these really exotic things. I think and I think you might go into this, but you might not. I think one of the disadvantages of the wine club is where your tastes are currently. You are so into exploring Texas wine. There's not really a Texas wine club yet. Obviously there's a Napa wine club. I mean, you can find stuff like that all the time. But that, one of the disadvantages I think mainly with the wine club is you're not picking. And that's one of those, it's the advantage. You're not picking, somebody else is doing the work for you, but it's also the disadvantage when you're man, I'm really been on like a Carmenere like kick.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be hard to find a wine club that only does Carmeneres. Now, maybe one day, like the Jackson Blood wine club that you and I will like be behind the scenes trying to run for him or something, we'll do some, crazy stuff like that. We'll lose money hand over fist. But,
right.
Like that's the big disadvantages I see to me is like, I got the set from my parents, and it's like, okay, I have no idea what like half of these are. Like,
yeah, well, and that's fun, but you're right. But I didn't put that in my disadvantages, but you're right. That is an interesting disadvantage because it's kind of as your tastes evolve, you're getting 12 bottles of something that maybe you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want because you've had enough to drink that you're just not crazy about these varietals. So that is a disadvantage. Let's go ahead and actually, on that note, let's go ahead and get into the disadvantages that I wrote down. That was a good one because I didn't think about that one. But like, so one of the other disadvantages is, quality can be questionable. So and my wine is a good example of that. I don't think it's a terrible quality wine. It's fine, but I could find no information about it, which is kind of my second disadvantage in this is it's very, very difficult sometimes in the uncurated, I guess, clubs is it's sort of difficult to find it because they tend to be white label wines that you don't know where the grapes came from. In this case, I know they came from California, but the only reason I know they came from California is because of labeling laws.
Yeah, and even then it's only 90%.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I think in California, if it doesn't even have to be only 90%. It's as long as some of the grapes come from California and the rest of the grapes come from an adjoining state, they're fine. So this could actually be like 60% Oregon. Who knows?
Well, and that's the thing is like, even then it may be more or less because they may not be able to do that club in California because of some of the labeling they do. Like that's the super bizarre thing. Like it's very unlikely.
Yeah.
Given how big California is.
Yeah. Now, my guess on this, honestly, like the way it tastes, you know what this reminds me of? And I may be super biased on this because it's bottled by a company called Incognito Wine.
Mm-hmm.
Not Michael Jackson, David Michael Winery, the ones that make Freak Show.
Yeah.
They have a red blend called Incognito that actually tastes similar to this. It's a lot more tannic than this, but
yeah, their wines are kind of aggressive.
They are very aggressive. Well, they're Lodi wines. Lodi tends to be pretty aggressive. It's hot. Mm-hmm. It's hot there, and they also tend to be very high alcohol. And this one is fairly high. It's 14.1%. So
I mean, that could be 13 to 15.
Yeah. So yeah, it could be very high. But so that's kind of one of the disadvantages is you don't really know. It's hard to find information about it. I don't really know where this came from. I know who bottled it, but I don't know what the winemaker is, where it came from, all that sort of stuff. And that's kind of part of the wine experience that I enjoy is just kind of exploring where it came from, who was doing what, and that kind of thing. And this, I just don't know. And again, I'll probably finish the bottle. This was good. I've had only like one or two that I just didn't finish the bottle at all because I didn't like it. But this one I like fine. This would be great for, if I had more opportunity to grill out and stuff here, this would be something I would probably bring to like a cookout.
What about cooking with it?
I could do that. Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad red blend. I could do like a roast or something with like a red wine gravy. That might be good. Yeah, that might be good. Maybe I'll try that. And then I guess the third disadvantage, which we already kind of covered earlier, was that sometimes it's just relabeled bulk wine. So sometimes what they're giving to you and saying is a $16 bottle of wine is actually like an $8 bottle of wine. It's just been relabeled.
It's 16 because of like the manufacturing cost, like this was an $8 bottle of wine before we spent the, for the 10,000 that we were going to produce, the labeling and everything like that jacked up the price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one thing though that kind of takes a lot of this guesswork out, and it's different because you're not going to get the variety that you get from a lot of these wine clubs. But we have a link that'll get you $10 off at Last Bottle Wines, and all of the wine that they have is curated. So you know that it's high quality wine. They have partnered with a lot of the wineries that their wine that they sell, and they have good relationships. So they're basically able to get these wines at a severe discount, and they kind of pass those savings on to you. So I've been getting a ton of stuff from Last Bottle Wines lately, and like way more than I probably should. And, but it's such good savings. Like I got that Cabernet Franc, which is a Napa Cabernet Franc. It's called like 2040 or something like that. I have to look up what it's called again. But it's like a $75 bottle of Cab Franc from Napa. Napa Cab Francs are really expensive, but Mason, I love Cab Franc. And Loire is actually my favorite place for Cab Franc, but I really like a lot of the ones that come out of Napa. And this one is so well structured. At first, I wasn't really crazy about it because I was like, well, it doesn't have like that punch in the face that I like. And then after like I was sipping on it for a day or two, I was like, you know what? I really, really appreciate how the structure on this is. And I think I got that for like $30, like a 75, $74 or $75 bottle of wine for like $30. And if you use our link, which is lastbottlewines.com/invite/tasting-anarchy, that's lastbottlewine.com/invite/tasting-anarchy, you get $10 off and you help out our show. To make it easier, I've actually redone the site a little bit, and right now, if you go to tasting...
By site, you mean... Okay, never mind, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, if you go to tastinganarchy.com, when you get onto that page, the very first like splash will just be kind of an explanation of the show, but if there's going to be, on your computer, there'll be 3 sections below it. The middle section is our Last Bottle Wine link. You click that, it'll take you right to the Last Bottle Wine sign-up page, and you can sign up there. It's going to help us out and help us get some, high quality wines that we can try out on the show and review for you. And you also get a high quality wine for $10 off. So
exactly
so it's a good deal. But so go check that out, and also just check out the site because I put some work into redoing it. And I think it looks a lot better than the old site.
I think it's definitely brought us into the modern age.
Yeah, it's a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
It's easier to navigate. I based it off of the template that I used for Chillderburg. So I think we mentioned Chillderburg already today, but just for those of you who don't know, Mason and our podcast, Tasting Anarchy, is sponsoring. Well, with the Friends Against Government podcast, we're sponsoring Chillderburg, which is the premier
brainchild of Jacob. You have talked to me about this for so long.
Well, no, so, and I don't know if you recall this. I came up with this idea when I was in my old apartment in Norfolk, and it's based off of a tweet from Carr.
That's right. It was based on a tweet from Carr.
Yeah, and it was just basically the tweet said something like, in June when the Bilderberg meets, I think I'm going to have a counter protest called Chillderburg. It's basically just me in my apartment drinking. And I came up with so many ideas from that tweet for how to make it work. This is the culmination of it. Now, it's been 2 years and we finally got it going. But now that I live here in Texas, I was like, you know what? Texas has no libertarian event. And there's a lot of really great wineries down in like the Austin area, and I love camping. I love hanging out on the lake. I love all those things, and I know that other libertarians and other people who are just interested in wine in general love it also. So I was like, let's get this going, make it an annual event. Let all the Friends Against Government fans come down. Let all the Tasting Anarchy friends come down. Let's just hang out, enjoy some good wine, enjoy the lake, fellowship as libertarians, and, meet new friends, have a good time. And so we're doing that. You volunteered to drive the wine van.
Yes.
Which is going to be great. So if you want to drink a lot of wine at the 3 wineries we're going to visit, I don't want to announce them yet because I want to make sure that everything is okay. So if right now it's 3 wineries, I just want to make sure that we can go to them because some of them have like a number of people's limit and stuff like that.
They have a number of people's limit. Some of them have general dress code limits.
Yeah. So
we don't want to be disturbing people. We want to represent ourselves. Well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, we're representing libertarianism. Now it's definitely going to get weird because Friends Against Government are there.
Jacob, we're both weird as crap.
That's true. So, but it's going to be a really awesome event. I hope to see you all there.
Yeah. It's June 8th and 9th in Texas.
Yep.
Lake Buchanan. No,
Buchanan, like Pat Buchanan. Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, every other time you've said it, you've always done an alternative pronunciation.
I think also every time I type it differently.
So what's the campground we're going to be at again?
The campground is called Black Rock Campground. It's inside of Llano County. Or I'm sorry, Llano County. The double L in Spanish is a Y sound. So it's Llano County Campground or Llano County Park. It's on the left bank of Lake Buchanan.
Okay. Also, did you know this lake? Like there's like only one natural lake in Texas, and this is an artificial reservoir lake. So it's created by the government. So we're gonna go dirty up the government's property.
Right. Exactly.
No, we're going to practice. I forget the phrase of it, but like basically, what you take in is what you take out.
Oh, well, so, as Walter Block says, we're not taking advantage of the government having built a lake. We're liberating the lake from the government.
Yeah, but I said we're going to dirty it up. We're not going to. We're not going to litter.
No, we're going to leave a very clean campsite. Yeah. But anyways, if you guys are interested, go over to @Chillderburg on Twitter, or you can go over to the Chillderburg website. It's chillderburg.com. I've got a newsletter sign-up link. If you sign up for that, you will be getting newsletters, and also I am working on a free ebook called "Your Facebook Friends Are Wrong About Skipping Chillderburg." All of Tom Woods. So it's going that free ebook is going to have all of the details.
You're murdering me. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So that will be, so if you sign up for the newsletter, you will be getting a link to download that, as well as some exclusive podcasts that will only be available for newsletter subscribers. Carr has agreed to do a couple with me. I'm sure that we can get Bird on board. Also, Dino from the Dino Files is going to do some with me. Mr. Sue has agreed to do a couple of exclusives, and you and I, Mason, we're going to do a couple of exclusives. What you'll do is, when that newsletter comes out, it will give you a code, and the code will give you access to those exclusive pods. So sign up, because you don't want to miss those. They're going to be really great.
Yeah, and it's not going to be like there's an archive of them now.
Yep, that's
as Tom Woods would say. It's not like we won't ever release them, but that's the thing. So one of the things I want to point out about this idea is you and I both really want to go on the Contra cruise.
Yeah,
but one of the things that is, and this is not a knock against Tom and Bob, but one of the problems with the Contra cruise is there is a high cost to go on a cruise.
Yeah.
This is camping at a lake. Other than getting to Texas, and there are some people who are traveling some incredible distances, apparently.
Yeah. But we've even got one guy who's, God forbid anything happens and he won't be able to make it, but he's coming from Oslo, Norway.
Yeah.
To come out and hang out with us. I don't want to plug him yet, because I don't want to put him on the spot, but he does have a blog that's actually very good. We also have a couple of people who are working on getting down all the way from Minnesota. Mason's coming out from Virginia. I'm working on getting Bird out, but I think Bird has school because he's still a youngster. And I think he's got school this summer, so he won't be able to come out. But and a lot of people traveling long distances to come. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And if you can't come, but you want to participate, Jacob, isn't there a way they can help fund the shenanigans?
That is absolutely true. If you go to chillderburg.com, you can give directly to us on PayPal. You can also pay through the GoFundMe campaign, which is also, there's a link to that on chillderburg.com. If you would rather pay in crypto, you can contact the Chillderburg Twitter @Chillderburg, and I will put you into contact with Car Campit, and Car Campit can accept crypto payments. So I know that a lot of libertarians are very into crypto. We would be more than happy to accept crypto payments. I can't process those because I'm a plebe, but Carr can. He's very into crypto. He knows how to process that. All right, Mason. So the last item that I want to get into before we end this episode, I don't want to go into super depth into it. Ah, dang it.
Because it's a very complex topic.
It is a complex topic, and I have a guest that I'm trying to line up who knows a lot more about it. And so this is on the Texas House Bill 4233. So I'll go ahead and summarize this for you. And so the bill is basically, it's a legislation that, if passed, will require all wineries in Texas to label, or all wines labeled in Texas as Texas wine, to be made out of 100% Texas grapes and be processed and fermented, or made in Texas. So currently, wines that are called Texas wines only require 75% of grapes to be used for the wine. The legislation is, the people who promote it are saying that it is consumer protection, because people who are drinking a Texas wine should know that it is 100% Texas grapes. They are also arguing that the legislation will signal that Texas is ready to compete on the world stage as a international wine, and also that Texas wine growers have, and this is, I guess, the last item that is the summary of it, is that the Texas wine growers, which is the Association of Texas Wine Growers, have endorsed the bill. And so they believe that this should be. So basically, the legislation says that if you want to call your wine Texas wine, it's got to be 100% Texas grapes. And you also have to make it in Texas. So I do understand this position. I don't like the idea that they feel like they need to go to the government for it, but I do understand, people are saying, look, if this is a Texas wine, it needs to be 100% Texas grapes. But you and I have discovered a lot of stuff about winemaking in general that makes this problematic. And I've got a couple of counters from, I don't know if I should say who this is from, because this is actually the guest I'm trying to line up, and I don't want to spoil that, but I'm going to go ahead and say some of the points from it. An anonymous winemaker in Texas that made a lot of very strong points, I think, against this law. And so
they publicly posted these comments.
In summary, Mason, you and I already know that any sort of government intervention is no bueno. It's not good. You're inviting people into your bed that you really don't want in your bed. So here are the, I guess, counterpoints to this legislation. So they say there are already wine growers in Texas that use 100% Texas grapes. Are you still there, Mason?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I thought my headphones fell out.
No. So I was trying to say, so the people who posted these comments, they posted these comments publicly, correct?
Yes, they did.
So I don't think it's wrong to state who it is, because you're summarizing their points.
Okay. So this is okay. You're right, but I would like this. I would like these people to come on and talk to this. So this is Siboney Cellars. So they are a small winery in the I think it's the Fredericksburg area in Texas. I would have to look up where they are. I'm not exactly sure, but it's Texas Hill Country. So their point was that they already used 100% Texas grown grapes, and that is one of their selling points. So do you remember, Mason? Well, I'm sure you'll remember, but you were not as involved in this as I was back in the days when Virginia was trying to make it illegal to allow smoking sections in restaurants. Okay. Now, I am not a fan of smoking, and I do not like it when people are smoking around me when I'm trying to eat, but I don't think that it's the government's business.
Correct.
And so what the Libertarians of Virginia Beach were doing is we were going around trying to get restaurants to support us in opposing that legislation. One of our strongest supporters was a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore called Atlas. Do you remember Atlas?
I do, but I don't know why.
Okay, so they had several locations in Virginia Beach. One of them was opposite the Kelly's Tavern that we used to meet at the Libertarian meetings. The very first Kelly's Tavern. So they had a restaurant there. Honestly, the food wasn't great. The service was pretty good. It was basically the same type of food as Kelly's. It was okay. It was burgers and that kind of thing.
Bar food.
Yeah, bar food, exactly. Their big selling point, though, was that they did not allow smoking. And this made it a very, very popular location for families to go eat. And so they were big supporters. That they had banked on this law. Is that a lot of the other restaurants allowed smoking sections, and Atlas said, no, we don't allow smoking at all. And after church, I remember going there all the time with my family when I was a kid because they didn't have smoking. My mom is opposed to smoking. My dad is opposed to smoking. They don't like it. It smells bad, and it makes the food taste bad. So they wanted to go to restaurants that had no smoking sections, and Atlas had no smoking allowed. And they were a huge supporter of this. So Siboney Cellars, I think, has a very similar position. They already use 100% Texas grown grapes. That is part of their marketing. And this law is going to rob them of that marketing. So that's one point that they made, was that a lot of Texas growers already use 100% Texas grapes. They don't need the government to tell them to do it. And those who don't do it don't say that they use 100% grapes from Texas. So their second, I'm not even actually saying these in order. These are just kind of like my summary of their article.
These are kind of how you position their own argument.
Right. Yeah. So they also said, what if we wanted to make like a sparkling wine, for example, and we don't really have the experience to do the sparkling wine. We don't really have the equipment to do it either, but there's somebody who's willing to do it for a low cost that is in another state. If we send them grapes that we've acquired that are 100% grapes from Texas, and we send it to, I'm making this up, but Arizona, for example, and these guys know how to make sparkling wine, and they're very good at it. They have the equipment, they have the safety knowledge, and they make it for us, and then they send us back the finished product. Isn't that 100% Texas?
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, so this law makes it so that if you did that, it would not be a 100% Texas wine, even though we, a Texas winemaker, wanted to make a sparkling wine out of Texas. We didn't have the equipment or facilities to do it. We found somebody who was willing to do it at a reasonable price that was out of state. We sent them the grapes. We were involved in the process as Texas residents. But this is not a Texas wine because of these new laws. So, and what do we label it? Then another one was they said that the AVA rules, which are the federal regulation on this, which, you know, you and I are not fans of the federal regulation, but the AVA rules don't require 100% grapes. So if you produce a wine, this is my example, if you produce a wine that's 80% Texoma grapes, so Texoma is a wine region that is north of Dallas. It's on the border of Oklahoma and Texas, hence the name Texoma. And so if you produce one that's 80% Texoma grapes and 20% grapes from a different state, the AVA rules say that you can call it a Texoma grape. Or you can call it a Texoma wine, which is a region in Texas. So how would you label that at that point?
Exactly.
So would you not be able to say that Texoma, AVA Texoma, and then just say Texas? Because like when you label a wine Willamette Valley, you say Oregon. But according to this law, they would not be able to call it Texas, but they'd be able to call it a wine region in Texas, which sort of leads to the next point. Texas is an enormous state. Second biggest state, I think, after Alaska.
It is indeed.
And what does that even mean if it's a Texas, if it's 100% Texas grown grapes? The hill country is completely different than the high plains region. The high plains region is very different from Texoma. There's the Davis Mountain region, which is a desert region. It's, again, very different. So if they got some of their grapes from each of these regions, and I think there's some other regions too that I'm not including, but if they got some of the grapes from each of these regions, well, what difference does it make if they get it from Texoma, High Plains, Hill Country, and Davis Mountain, and if they got 80% from Hill Country and 20% from Napa?
Like, yeah, exactly.
Like, what's the difference? Like, you know, these are very different regions. Just because it's in the artificial constructs of the government, which is like Texas is just, it's a bunch of lines on a map. Who cares? The AVAs are supposed to infer terroir. And terroir is a complicated topic, and we've covered this before, but terroir is basically, it's a summary, to summarize it, it's the soil, the weather, the environment, and the tradition or the whatever the winemakers who touch the grapes, whatever they're doing. That's terroir, I guess, basically, in a nutshell. I mean, it's much more complicated than that, but we've covered it before, so you guys can go listen to the previous episodes. So the terroir is very specific to regions, and even can be very, very, very specific to subregions. I mean, you and I talked about this earlier in the episode, is you've got left bank and right bank of Bordeaux, and even on the left bank and right bank, there's a huge difference between the different areas on the left and right bank, and you get very, very different wines. A lot of that's impacted by tradition of the winemaking, but it is also impacted by terroir. Now, the terroir of Texoma and the terroir of Hill Country are completely different. The weather is completely different. It's way less humid up here, or north of me, than it is down in Hill Country. Hill Country is very humid, and so they're going to have a lot of different viticulture practices because they have to worry about a lot of different diseases that even like High Plains, for example, doesn't really have to worry about a lot of the rot that they're going to have to worry about down in Hill Country because it's not as humid. So,
yeah, I mean, like this is one of those things where like there's so much that like, thinking about the difference between the left and right bank, like you're basically telling these people ahead of time, like, no, you have to completely change your standards to something we've just made up.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that kind of gets into the last point. And the last point being, should legislatures of people who have no experience in winemaking, or maybe a few of them have some, but should they be able to control viticulture practices and winemaking procedure when they don't actually have any experience in that?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, like what's the basis of the idea here? It's like, oh, we're ready to show that Texas is ready to compete on the international market. It's like, well, no, Texas is not.
Yeah.
Like, Texas doesn't have, like, a deep back pocket of grapes. So, if a massive storm event happens, you could lose. Well, I mean, Texas is so large that it's possible that this wouldn't happen. But, like, you could have, like, an entire AVA, devastated by an event. to the point where there wasn't enough Texas grapes for them to replenish. Like, you know, in California, you could at least get some backstock from someone. But like in Texas, like you really don't have that deep bench to back you up in case something happens. And now, like I needed like an extra 100,000 pounds of, you know, whatever grape varietal. And now I can't get it because I risk tainting my entire line from being labeled as Texas wine. Whereas, you know, the people we're specifically quoting from, you know, Siboney sellers, they're like 100%. So they probably wouldn't take that bench, you know, loss to buy like grapes from Virginia or wherever else, but still.
Yeah. Well, and also you think about it too, is that Texas is larger than France. So you've got one state that they're trying to enforce this law that requires 100% grapes from, and maybe this is as a counterpoint. I don't know exactly. I don't know if this is support or not support, but it's just very different than the world stage. This is the new world. It's huge.
Yeah. The whole point of like American wine is it doesn't have these bizarre intricacies that the Europeans tend to have, that like where they focus everything so highly, you know, they drive it down to this, you know, thing. So just so you know, France is 21,000 square miles less in area than Texas.
Okay.
So, but yeah, like that, like the idea that you would be like, oh, we want to compete in the international market, so we're going to handicap our people on how they can label themselves. And, you know, people might come back and, you know, this is one of those things that you and I talk a lot about this, and there people come back and be like, blah, blah, blah. What? Oh, it's just a label. Well, the label has to be approved by a government, like one level of the federal government. Now you're putting specific like restrictions on these things, like on what these people can do and how they label. Like our friend John, and I can never pronounce his name correctly.
Davidanius.
Yeah. Like, let's say that in an instance that he could have gotten some, you know, Washington grapes for making Pinot Noir and stuff like that. And he needed to round it out because like Oregon had a lot of fire damage. Like now, like, so are we saying like he can't label it as Oregon? Like even if it's 95% that way, like this would like stop him from being able to do that. And he'd have to create different labels and get different approvals. I mean, it's a, like,
for a small wine producer,
impact.
Exactly. Especially for a small wine producer like that, is that like, this is not like, it's not as trivial as a lot of people think. It does have a huge impact. And besides that, there is already a label program that's private that is that for something like $1 a case or something like that, which is a case is 12 bottles, something like $1 a case, and only up to the first 200 cases, you can get this special like trademarked label that's 100% Texas certified, right? So they have a certification program already. And what's funny is that the Texas Wine Growers Association kind of rejected that in favor of legislation. Yeah. And this label has been in the works since I think 2016 or maybe even earlier than that, 2015 maybe. And they've been pushing this, and a lot of the winemakers who were against it support this legislation. So what I don't like to attribute motive to people, but what's the motive to force everybody else to do the same thing you're doing? Do you not have confidence in the Texas grapes? Is that the problem?
Yeah, like that's the question is like who wins out on this? Yeah, like. Does the Texas Wine Grower Association have some sort of thing where, like, let's say that, Jacob, you and I moved to Texas, and let's just pretend Louisiana has, like, a huge grape production thing, but, like, nobody buys Louisiana wine because nobody's ever heard of it. Right. So we buy all the grapes from Louisiana, and then we're making wine in Texas, and we want to call it Texas wine. We're not saying it's 100% Texas grown, we're not falsifying anything like that. Right. But now it's like, okay, well, we fermented it here, we picked the blending here, we did everything, all of that stuff. Suddenly, like, okay, we can't even do that. So
right, yeah, it is a weird, it's a very strange thing, and I to some degree I do understand both sides of it, other than the side that supports the bill, and that is that why would you force your compatriots in winemaking to take on an additional burden of this new compliance that they didn't have before. And this is the thing is that also, again, kind of going back to that case where people don't think it's a big deal. It's not only that you can't label your wine Texas, it's that now you have to go through an additional level of compliance, and compliance is expensive.
And it's not like you just fill out a form that you downloaded from the internet and then just have it on file in case they show up.
Right.
And go, okay, no, you have to prove to somebody. This is creating a job for somebody to go out and look into this and enforce it and have mechanisms for people to be sued for possible infractions. I mean, and like, yes, like you and I would definitely agree from just two people who are very into data science, like you would want to be keeping track of where your grapes came from to the micro level.
Right.
But now you have to do it. And you have to have these records to be able to turn over. It's just this
it's very
desire
onerous
to produce data. It's so weird.
Yeah, well, I have a friend of the family who I would love to have on the show at some point if I can work it out. Oh, she's a huge lefty, so she may not want to be on our show, but but she makes wine in the San Francisco area or Sacramento area. I'm sorry, and the regulations for them is very onerous. Now now they're big hardcore lefties, so they support him still, but it's an enormous cost. Like I was talking to her at my sister's baby shower when I was out in California, and just asked her about it. I was like, well, what exactly goes into it? She's like, well, we don't have to pay too much because we're just a wine of California, but so we don't have any sort of AVA labeling, but it's expensive. She says we do have to make sure that we have only grapes from California, and there are inspections, and we do have to comply with those, and it's at our own expense. And they kind of started it as a hobby, and they like doing it, but it does add a cost. And so if you want to get, I'm going down next weekend to plant grapes with a new grape grower in Texas, and I think it's going to be a really great experience. You guys, you should tune into the future episodes because I'm going to kind of recount the experience. I think it's going to be really fun. But this is an additional cost to him, for example. So he's just starting out. He's a young guy. He's younger than you and me, and he's trying to get a new vineyard going and winery associated with the vineyard eventually. Well, what if he has a bad year? And it just so happens that picking up some grapes from California, for example, who has, one year has a really great year. Or, you know what? Actually, another good example. This is a total globalization thing, but remember we did that article not too long ago where Britain had such a good year for wine production that they had so many grapes that they couldn't process them all. Mm-hmm. So imagine they have this huge glut of grapes in Britain. Texas has a drought, and we don't have a good production here. And Britain offers to offload those grapes at a severe discount to Texas growers or to Texas winemakers for a huge discount, refrigerated shipped down to Houston, one of the largest ports in the country, trucks them all out to all the wineries. They make one of the best vintages of all time out of these British grapes that, from a glut or whatever, mixed in with their Texas grapes. How is that not a Texas wine? That is American ingenuity right there. This is that we figured it out. We imported this crap from Britain. We turned it into gold, and then we sold it. That's America.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, one of the things that is, like, we didn't even touch on is how much this babies the consumer.
Yeah, exactly.
And just basically shows that the consumer is not responsible for doing their own research. That somehow, and this is kind of one of those things that's like, well, the federal regulations for the AVA that said we could be 75% or whatever the percentage is, isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like to you and me, like, providing labeling and in providing information is just a benefit because like you and I are still new enough that we were like, oh, this is part Louisianan grapes. Maybe this will be really good. Let's try it.
Yeah.
We're not going to turn away from it because of it. Like we want to know, we want to see these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? And so anyways, that's a great place to kind of wrap up on this because we're running out of time, but I think Texas has a lot of really exciting stuff coming out. I really hope that this type of legislation does not,
does not pass.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, hopefully it doesn't pass. And if it does pass, I'm sure, it's hard to tell one way or the other, but if it does pass, I really hope it doesn't impact the Texas wine industry. Well, not terribly, because I think there's a lot of really great stuff coming out of Texas. I think Texas is finally, well, I don't really have a lot of past experience, but I think they're discovering their niche of winemaking, that
they're discovering their terroir.
Yeah, exactly. They're discovering the terroir.
They're getting the foot of like understanding and knowing what their soil and what their environment does to the grape.
Yeah, exactly. And what
need
grapes?
any hindrance.
Yeah, what grapes grow here really well. I'm reading this really good book. Let me look it up real quick. I'll cut out the pause, but I just want to actually get the title of the book correct.
Yeah. Well, while you're looking up the title of the book, I'm going to do some plugs.
Okay.
So, if you haven't caught it, you can follow Jacob's Adventures on Twitter. 2 places: Chillderburg, so Child. Oh my goodness,
Burg.
Childerberg.
Yeah.
Chillderburg. You can follow Jacob's Adventures on our wonderful libertarian meetup in the wonderful government-made lake in Texas.
Yeah.
Or you can follow Jacob again, posting things about Tasting Anarchy, Tasting Anarchy on Twitter.
Yeah.
You can follow or check out our beautiful redone website, tastinganarchy.com. And if you want to see Jacob or I, well, Jacob's been a guest twice on the Friends Against Government.
That's
Fags,
right. Yep.
Who are the co-sponsor of Chillderburg.
Mm-hmm.
And then we both have appeared on Sounds Like Liberty. And OG, apparently only 1 month out from Tom Woods, Mark Clare. He was our most recent guest. Wonderful guy. Hopefully we'll have him back again. But yeah, the Lions of Liberty. I mean, maybe one day we'll be able to get Brian and John Odie Odermatt on, which would be a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah.
Or get all 3 of them out for Chillderburg Ghosts.
And also, you and I have got plans at some point to go into Virginia wine country and talk to Howie Snowden, who's the godfather of their libertarianism.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that'll be good. So I looked at the book. These would actually be great people to have on. The book is called The History of Texas Wine. Very, very simple title. It's by Catherine Crane and Neil Crane. I do recall the point. So one of the points that they made in this was that when some in the 60s and 70s, when people were first starting to start growing grapes in Texas, they kind of discovered, hey, you can do it here. There was some people up in the Texas High Plains that were just doing mass grapes, and they would sell them as just kind of filler for other winemakers. Then there were some people who were like, can we make good wine here? And it took a long time for them to discover what the terroir of Texas was good for. So they would hire these consultants from like Napa or Sonoma or wherever, who would tell them, plant these Cabernet Sauvignon, plant, Merlot, plant these different things that are, Chardonnay, that grow really, or that sell really well. That was that was always their argument. Well, this sells well. And
make money.
Yeah, make money. But it didn't grow well here. And it took time for people to realize that Texas is more suited for really unique Viognier, really great Tempranillo, good Syrah. Zinfandel does well here, actually, I think, at least. Syrah is, I'm not really a huge fan of Syrah in general, but Syrah, I think, does well here as far as Syrah goes. There's just a lot of really interesting stuff coming out of Texas. I think that it's a place to watch. I am incredibly biased because I live here, but I think that because I lived in Virginia, had sampled quite a few Virginia wines. I also used to live in California, and when I go back there, I sample a lot of California wines. Everybody's sampling California wines because it's California, and that's like the big American wine area. But don't discount places like Texas. Texas is growing big. It's got such different areas that produce such interesting things, and don't discount other kind of minor areas. I was reading recently in another book I'm reading called Godforsaken Grapes, that apparently like South New Jersey has one of the best production areas for Bordeaux style wines.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, not only South New Jersey, but like if you live locally and people are producing wine locally, try it. We're not saying that's got to be the only wine you drink, but give it a shot.
Yeah, exactly. Give it a shot. We talked to Pepper a couple of episodes ago. They're apparently doing some really cool stuff in Indiana. I wouldn't have even thought of Indiana, but if you have a local winery, go check it out, and then hit us up. Hit us up at Tasting Anarchy on Twitter and tell us what you're trying. If I can get a bottle of it, I'll get a bottle of it and review it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's a great place to close. Mason, do you have anything else you want to say?
I don't.
All right.
Other than stay free.
All right, everybody, stay free.
Once a year, the world's power brokers meet in secret at a heavily secured facility and discuss the fate of regular people like you. This meeting is known as the Chillderburg.
But you don't have to worry about that, because you're going to Chillderburg. Chillderburg is the premier gathering of free folk in Texas, held at the beautiful Black Rock Park on the banks of refreshing Buchanan Lake in Llano County.
Chillderburg 2019, June 8th and 9th.
Chill in the lake.
Make new friends with liberty lovers like you.
Enjoy camping in the great outdoors.
Hop in the wine van and visit the local wineries. Participate in podcasting magic and much, much more. Email us at tastinganarchy@gmail.com or reach out to us at Chillderburg on Twitter for additional details. Chillderburg 2019, June 8th and 9th. I'll see you there.